The morning started like any other at Kepler Station, humanity's newest outpost floating in the cold darkness between stars. Coffee machines hummed in the mess hall while technicians ran their daily checks on the station's systems. Nobody expected this Tuesday to change the course of human history. Commander Rodriguez stood at the observation deck, watching the massive alien ships approach through the viewport. 3 vessels, each the size of a small city, moved with the graceful silence that only came from technology humanity could barely understand. The Galactic Trade Consortium had finally answered Earth's requests for membership in their vast network of civilizations. "They're actually coming," whispered Lieutenant Park, her breath fogging the cold glass. "After 50 years of sending messages into space, they're finally here." The docking process took hours. These weren't ships designed for human-sized ports. Everything about them screamed of a civilization that thought bigger, built stronger, and had been doing both for thousands of years, longer than humanity had even known. Space travel was possible. Ambassador Kethver stepped through the airlock. First, the alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like oil on water and 4 arms that moved with mechanical precision. Behind him followed a parade of creatures from worlds humanity had only dreamed about. There were beings made of what looked like living crystal, others that seemed to shift between solid and gas, and some that hurt to look at directly. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," Kethver's voice came through a translation device that made him sound like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "We bring an offer of friendship and cooperation." The human delegation, led by Admiral Chun, tried their best to look dignified despite being completely outclassed. Their dress uniforms seemed cheap and crude next to the flowing robes and living metal garments of their visitors. But they stood tall, representing not just Earth, but the dream of humanity reaching for the stars. The meeting took place in Kepler Station's largest conference room, which suddenly felt incredibly small with a dozen alien species crammed inside. The air recyclers worked overtime to handle the different atmospheric needs of each visitor. "Your species shows promise," announced Kethver, his 4 hands moving in patterns that the translation device interpreted as formal gestures. "You have achieved faster-than-light travel, established basic interstellar communication, and demonstrated the ability to build permanent structures in space. These are the minimum requirements for consideration in the Galactic Trade Consortium." Admiral Chun leaned forward in his chair. "We're honored by your consideration. Humanity has long dreamed of joining a galactic community. However," continued another alien, "this one resembling a walking tree with too many eyes, your technology remains primitive. Your ships are slow, your weapons are basic, and your industrial capacity is limited. To properly participate in galactic commerce, you will need significant upgrades to your fleet capabilities." The humans exchanged glances. This was the moment they had all been preparing for. Earth's entire shipbuilding industry had been working around the clock for months, preparing their best vessels for inspection. The pride of human engineering floated in the dock, waiting to impress these advanced civilizations. Fortunately, Kethver's translation device somehow managed to convey what sounded like generosity. "The consortium has a solution. We have prepared a gift for your species. A starter fleet that will allow you to begin participating in galactic trade routes." Immediately, Admiral Chun's heart raced. This was better than they had hoped for. Advanced alien technology, freely given, would accelerate human development by centuries. The aliens led the human delegation to the largest docking bay, where massive blast doors slowly ground open to reveal what lay beyond. The humans pressed against the viewport, eager to see their new fleet. What they saw made their hearts sink. Floating in the void were dozens of ships, but none of them looked like the sleek, powerful vessels they had expected. These were clearly old, used, and in many cases falling apart. Rust-covered hull plating that had been patched and repatched countless times. Engines hung at odd angles, clearly jury-rigged to keep working long past their intended lifespan. Several ships had entire sections missing, sealed off with what looked like emergency patches. "This is your gift," announced Kethfer with what the humans were beginning to recognize as alien satisfaction. 47 vessels of various classes and capabilities. Cargo haulers, mining ships, patrol craft, and support vessels. Everything a growing civilization needs to establish its presence in the galaxy. Lieutenant Park stared at a ship that was literally held together with what appeared to be space tape. "They're giving us their garbage," she whispered. Dr. Williams, the expedition's chief engineer, had been quietly studying the vessels through a pair of binoculars. While the other humans focused on the obvious problems, he was seeing something else entirely. These ships represented technology from dozens of different species, each with their own approaches to solving the fundamental problems of space travel. "The vessels may appear aged," admitted the tree-like alien, "but each represents proven technology. Some of these designs have been operating in space for over 1,000 of your years. They are reliable, if not modern." Admiral Chun forced a smile. "We're grateful for your generosity. This will certainly help humanity take its first steps into the galactic community." The alien delegation seemed pleased with this response. They spent the next few hours providing basic operational manuals and technical specifications, though. Most of the documentation was in languages humanity couldn't read. The translation devices could handle speech, but written technical diagrams were apparently beyond their capabilities. "One final note," Kethfer added as the formal ceremony concluded. "These vessels are provided as is, with no warranty or technical support. The consortium assumes no responsibility for their continued operation or safety. However, we're confident that even primitive species can manage to keep such simple technology functioning." As the alien ships departed, leaving humanity alone with their new fleet, the mood among the human crew was mixed. The politicians would certainly spin this as a diplomatic victory. Earth's first alien contact had resulted in the gift of an entire space fleet. The media would have a field day, but the engineers and ship captains saw a different reality. They had been given a collection of broken-down relics that other civilizations had thrown away. It was like being gifted a junkyard and being told. It was a car dealership. Dr. Williams spent the night floating between the derelict vessels in a maintenance pod, using portable scanners to peer inside their hulls. What he found fascinated him. These weren't just random ships. They represented a cross-section of galactic technology, each one a different solution to the same basic problems humanity faced every day. The Zentari cargo hauler used plasma conduits that could carry 10 times more power than human systems. The Vector patrol ship had shield generators that created protective fields using principles human physics barely understood. The Morden mining vessel mounted weapons that could crack asteroids with surgical precision. Each ship was a treasure trove of advanced technology, even if that technology was wrapped in failing hull plating and held together with emergency repairs. The aliens had given humanity their cast-offs, but they had also handed them the keys to understanding how the galaxy really worked. As Dr. Williams floated in the darkness, studying the gentle curve of a ship that had once sailed between distant stars, he began to smile. The aliens thought they were being generous by giving humanity their junk. They had no idea they had just provided the raw materials for something far more dangerous than they could imagine. 6 months had passed since the aliens left humanity with their collection of space junk. The politicians on Earth had moved on to other concerns, satisfied that they had secured humanity's place in the galaxy. But deep in the industrial heart of Titan Station, something incredible was taking shape. Dr. Williams wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stood before the most ambitious project humanity had ever attempted. The ship hanging in the construction bay looked nothing like the rusted Zentari cargo hauler they had started with. Gone were the corroded hull plates and failing systems. In their place was something that defied easy description. "Are you sure this thing won't explode the moment we turn it on?" asked Chief Petty Officer Jackson, staring up at the maze of alien technology that had been woven together like a mechanical spider web. Williams grinned. "Honestly, I have no idea. But that's never stopped us before. The past 6 months had been a masterclass in human stubbornness. while other species seemed content to use alien technology exactly as it was designed. The human engineering teams had asked a different question: what if we used it differently? They had torn apart every single ship in their gifted fleet, cataloging components and studying how each piece worked. The Zentari plasma conduits weren't just power cables, they were programmable energy directors that could be taught to route power in patterns their original creators never imagined. The Vector shield generators didn't just create barriers, they manipulated space itself in ways that could be turned offensive as easily as defensive. The beauty of getting everyone's hand-me-downs, Williams explained to his team, is that we now have technology from dozens of different species. Each one solved the same problems in completely different ways. Lieutenant Rodriguez held up a crystalline component that pulsed with inner light. The Etherian phase shifters are particularly interesting. Their ships use these to avoid obstacles by briefly existing in a different dimension. But watch what happens when we reverse the polarity. She connected the crystal to a test rig and activated it. Instead of the gentle shimmer that indicated dimensional phasing, the crystal began to emit a field that made nearby objects appear to vibrate at impossible frequencies. You've turned a defensive system into a weapon, breath technician Kumar. Anything caught in that field would be shaken apart at the molecular level. This had become the pattern across all their projects. Human engineers seemed incapable of looking at alien technology without immediately wondering how to weaponize it, improve it, or combine it with something else entirely. The aliens had built their systems to work in isolation, each component carefully designed to perform one specific function perfectly. Humans built systems that talked to each other. The ship they had named Scrapper's Dream represented the culmination of this philosophy. Its hull was a patchwork of materials from a dozen different species, each section chosen not for appearance but for function. Zentari duralloy provided strength, while Morden adaptive plating could shift its molecular structure to deflect different types of attacks. The real innovation was inside. Where alien ships typically had separate systems for power, weapons, shields, and propulsion, the Scrapper's Dream treated all of these as parts of a single interconnected network. The same plasma conduits that powered the engines could instantly redirect energy to boost the shields. The shield generators could reverse their polarity to create devastating offensive fields. The propulsion system could channel thrust through gravitational manipulators to create artificial gravity wells. It's like we're speaking a language the aliens never learned, Williams mused as he watched his team run final system checks. They think in terms of individual components. We think in terms of integrated systems. The first test flight was scheduled for a quiet sector of space, far from any inhabited systems. If something went wrong, they didn't want to take anyone else with them. The skeleton crew consisted of volunteers who understood they were risking their lives to prove a point about human ingenuity. Captain Torres sat in the pilot's seat, her hands moving across controls that looked like they belonged in an art museum rather than a spaceship. Human engineers had redesigned the entire interface, combining alien technology with human psychology to create something that felt natural despite being completely unprecedented. All systems showing green, reported the navigator, though green was a relative term when half their instruments displayed information in colors human eyes had never been meant to see. Take us out, nice and easy, Torres commanded. Let's see what we've built. The Scrapper's Dream moved with a grace that surprised everyone aboard. The fusion of different propulsion technologies had created something smoother and more responsive than any pure-breed alien design, but the real test was yet to come. They had arranged for a confrontation that would prove whether their innovations were genius or madness. A pirate fleet had been terrorizing the outer shipping lanes, preying on isolated cargo vessels with impunity. These weren't desperate criminals in broken-down ships. These were professional raiders flying military-grade vessels stolen from various galactic powers. The pirates had grown bold, confident that no single ship could threaten their operations. When they detected the Scrapper's Dream entering their territory, they saw an opportunity for easy prey. The ship's mixed construction and unusual energy signatures suggested another desperate human attempt at space travel. "Unknown vessel, prepare to be boarded," came the transmission from the pirate flagship. "Surrender your cargo and you won't be harmed," Torres smiled. "This is Captain Torres of the Earth vessel Scrapper's Dream. You are trespassing in human-protected space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The pirate's laughter filled the communication channel. "Human-protected space? You people can barely keep your own ships running. Stand down before we blow you apart." What happened next would be talked about in spacer bars across the galaxy for years to come. The pirate fleet, consisting of 6 heavily armed vessels, moved to surround the lone human ship. Their tactics were sound, their weapons were powerful, and their crews were experienced. None of that mattered. The Scrappers' Dream didn't fight like any ship they had ever encountered. When the pirates opened fire, their weapons passed harmlessly through what appeared to be the human vessel's hull. The ship had activated Etherian phase technology, existing just slightly outside normal spacetime. While the confused pirates tried to understand why their shots weren't connecting, the Scrappers' Dream struck back. Vector shield generators, reversed and amplified through Zentari power conduits, created gravitational anomalies that crushed 2 pirate ships like tin cans. Modern mining lasers, redesigned for combat and powered by hybrid fusion reactors, carved through military-grade armor like it was paper. The remaining pirates tried to flee, but the human ship had one more surprise. The same gravitational manipulators that provided propulsion could be reconfigured to create artificial gravity wells. The pirate vessels found themselves trapped, unable to escape as their own engines worked against them. In less than 10 minutes, the most feared pirate fleet in the sector had been completely neutralized. Not destroyed, the humans had been careful to disable rather than kill. But the message was clear. As word of the encounter spread through the galactic communication networks, species across the stars began to realize that humanity had done something unprecedented. They had taken discarded technology and turned it into something entirely new. Something that didn't follow the established rules of galactic warfare. The aliens had given humanity junk, expecting gratitude for their generosity. Instead, they had handed humans the tools to revolutionize space combat itself. 2 years had passed since the Scrapper's Dream made its mark on galactic history. What started as one experimental ship had grown into something that kept alien military strategists awake at night. The human fleet was no longer just modified junk, it had become a collection of nightmares. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Defiant Hope, watching as the latest addition to their fleet completed its shakedown cruise. The ship had once been a luxury liner, the kind of vessel that carried wealthy aliens on pleasure cruises between star systems. Now it bristled with technology that made seasoned space warriors nervous. "How many laws of physics did we break with this one?" asked Commander Blake, studying the readouts from the ship's impossible systems. "All of them, I think," Chun replied with satisfaction. "Plus a few that haven't been discovered yet." The transformation of humanity's fleet had become an obsession for every engineer, technician, and dreamer in human space. Each new ship pushed the boundaries further than the last. The Iron Phoenix could phase shift through solid matter, slipping through asteroid fields and enemy formations like a ghost. The Chaos Hammer launched swarms of self-repairing drones that could reprogram any technology they touched. The Void Walker created artificial black holes that pulled enemy ships out of formation, but the Defiant Hope was different. It was their flagship, their statement to the galaxy that humanity would not be underestimated again. "Take a look at this," said Dr. Patterson, the fleet's chief science officer, as she pulled up holographic displays of their latest creation. "We started with a luxuriant pleasure craft designed for comfort and elegance. 3 decks of restaurants, entertainment suites, and observation lounges. The hologram showed the ship's original configuration: sleek lines, large windows, and graceful curves that spoke of peaceful purposes. Then the image shifted to show what it had become. Now we have a mobile fortress that can support a crew of 2,000 in combat conditions while simultaneously serving as a research facility, manufacturing center, and command hub for the entire fleet. The transformation was staggering. Where once there had been dining halls, now there were drone fabrication bays. The observation lounges had become sensor arrays that could detect ships hiding behind planets. The luxury suites housed quantum computers that could process battle data faster than most alien civilizations could think. The best part, Patterson continued, is that it still looks like a pleasure craft from the outside. Enemy forces consistently underestimate what they're facing until it's too late. This had become humanity's signature approach. While other species built ships that looked dangerous, humans built ships that looked harmless until they revealed their true nature. The galaxy was learning to fear vessels that appeared innocent. Captain Rodriguez had been given command of the Defiant Hope, a responsibility that came with both honor and terror. She was piloting a ship that represented technologies from dozens of species, combined in ways that their creators had never imagined possible. "Orders from Earth Command," reported the communications officer. "We're to investigate the situation. At the Procyon Gate, the hegemony has established a blockade." The Procyon Gate was a natural wormhole that connected two distant parts of the galaxy. Control of the gate meant control of one of the most important trade routes in known space. The hegemony, a militaristic alliance of species known for their aggressive expansion, had recently claimed the gate as their territory. "How many ships are we talking about?" Rodriguez asked. 17 hegemony war cruisers plus support vessels. Intelligence estimates over 30 ships total. The bridge fell silent. Even with their advanced technology, taking on 30 military vessels seemed like suicide. But Rodriguez had been chosen for this command because she understood something. The aliens didn't. Human ships weren't meant to fight fair. The journey to Procyon took 3 days. During that time, the crew prepared for what might be the most important battle in human history. This wouldn't be a quick encounter with pirates or raiders. This would be a full-scale engagement with one of the galaxy's major military powers. They approached the gate. The scale of the hegemony fleet became clear. The war cruisers were massive, each one larger than any ship humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with the distinctive blue-black metal that marked hegemony construction. These weren't ships that had been cobbled together from spare parts. They were purpose-built instruments of war. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the hegemony flagship. The alien commander was a Korthek, one of the warrior species that formed the backbone of hegemony military. Might. Its forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel, and its eyes glowed with the predatory intelligence that had made the Korthek feared across the galaxy. "Human vessel." The creature's voice rumbled through the translation system. "You are trespassing in hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Rodriguez stood up from her command chair, making sure the alien could see her clearly. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Fleet. The Procyon Gate is neutral territory under galactic law. Your blockade is illegal." The Korthek's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Galactic law is decided by those with the strength to enforce it. You pilot a single vessel against the fleet. Your courage is admirable, but your judgment is flawed." "We'll see about that," Rodriguez replied. Cutting the transmission. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The Defiant Hope didn't charge into battle like a traditional warship. Instead, it began to change. The ship's hull started to shift and reconfigure, sections sliding apart to reveal hidden weapon arrays and defensive systems. But these weren't conventional weapons. The humans had learned to think beyond traditional concepts of space combat. The first surprise was the gravity wells. The Voidwalker's technology had been integrated into the Defiant Hope systems, allowing it to create localized distortions in space-time. Several hegemony ships found themselves pulled out of formation, their carefully planned battle lines disrupted by forces they couldn't see or understand. The second surprise was the drone swarms. Thousands of tiny machines poured from hidden bays, each one programmed with adaptive AI that could learn and evolve during combat. The drones didn't just attack, they infiltrated, turning the hegemony's own systems against them. But the real shock came when the Defiant Hope began to multiply. The ship's holographic projectors, enhanced with Etherian phase technology and Zentari plasma manipulation, created dozens of perfect copies of the vessel. The hegemony fleet suddenly found itself surrounded by what appeared to be an entire human armada. "Multiple contacts!" screamed the hegemony sensor operator. 67 human vessels and counting. The Korthak commander's confidence began to waver as his fleet opened fire on targets that dissolved into light when hit, only to reappear somewhere else. Meanwhile, the real Defiant Hope moved through the chaos like a predator, its advanced sensors tracking every enemy vessel while its adaptive weapons found weaknesses in their defenses. The battle lasted 6 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The hegemony had brought ships designed to fight other ships. The humans had brought something that rewrote the rules of what a ship could be. When the last hegemony vessel limped away from the battlefield, leaving the Procyon Gate open, the galaxy received a clear message. Humanity wasn't just another species struggling to find its place among the stars. They had become something new, something dangerous, something that could take the discarded pieces of alien civilization and forge them into weapons that defied comprehension. The junk had become a fleet. The fleet had become a force that would reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. The emergency session of the Galactic Trade Consortium was unlike anything in their 1,000-year history. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered on Nexus Prime, the neutral world that served as the galaxy's diplomatic center. The massive council chamber, designed to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes, hummed with nervous energy and barely controlled panic. Ambassador Kethver of the Zentari delegation stood at his assigned podium, his forearms gesturing wildly as he addressed the assembly. 2 years ago, he had been the one to present humanity with their generous gift of discarded ships. Now he was demanding answers for what those ships had become. "The humans have violated every principle of technological development," Kethver's translator made his voice echo through the chamber. "They have taken our carefully designed systems and corrupted them into something unrecognizable. This is not innovation, this is technological heresy." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. The Morden representative, a crystalline being whose body rang like a bell when agitated, chimed in with their own concerns. "Our mining lasers were designed to extract resources from asteroids. The humans have somehow increased their power output by 300% and turned them into ship-killing weapons. This violates the Treaty of Controlled Technology Distribution." Dr. Williams sat in the human delegations section, trying not to smile as he listened to the complaints. He had been promoted to Fleet Admiral after the success of their modified ships, and now he found himself at the center of the galaxy's biggest diplomatic crisis in centuries. The Etherian delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a specialized environmental suit, spoke in harmonics that their translator struggled to interpret. "The phase shift technology we provided was meant for defensive purposes only. Somehow, the humans have weaponized dimensional manipulation itself. Ships that can exist in multiple realities simultaneously should not be possible. Yet they exist," rumbled the hegemony representative, a scarred veteran of the Procyon Gate battle. "I have seen human vessels appear in 12 different locations at once, each one solid enough to fire weapons and absorb damage. Our tactical computers cannot process formations that violate the basic laws of physics." The chamber erupted in overlapping translations as dozens of species tried to speak at once. Each had their own horror story about human modifications to alien technology. The Vector complained about shield generators being turned into gravity weapons. The Luxarians were appalled that their pleasure craft had become mobile fortresses. Even the peaceful Botanical Collective was upset that their agricultural biodomes had been converted into self-repairing armor plating. Chairman Veltar, an ancient being from a species so old that no one remembered their planet of origin, called for order with a gesture that made the chamber's translation systems emit a sound like breaking glass. "The question before us is simple. The chairman's voice carried the weight of millennia. Have the humans violated the terms of their admission to the consortium? And if so, what are we prepared to do about it? The accusations came in waves. The humans had supposedly broken 17 different technology-sharing agreements, violated 43 safety protocols, and created weapon systems that fell under 6 different banned categories. But as each charge was read, Dr. Williams noticed something interesting. No one could point to a specific rule that humanity had actually broken when it was finally his turn to speak. Williams stood slowly and walked to the center of the chamber. The massive space fell silent as representatives from across the galaxy focused their attention on the human who had orchestrated their transformation from galactic newcomers to galactic threat. "Honored delegates," Williams began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, "I want to thank you all for this opportunity to address your concerns. But before I respond to your accusations, I'd like to ask a simple question. What exactly did you think we were going to do with the ships you gave us?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their specialized seating. "When you presented us with 47 vessels, you told us they were a gift to help humanity establish its place in the galactic community. You provided basic operational manuals and wished us luck. At no point did anyone tell us how we were supposed to use this technology, or more importantly, how we weren't supposed to use it." Williams activated a holographic projector that filled the chamber's center with a 3-dimensional image of the original Zentari cargo hauler they had been given. This ship was designed by Zentari engineers for Zentari crews using Zentari assumptions about how technology should work. But you gave it to humans. We don't think like Zentari. We don't have the same limitations or the same fears. The hologram shifted to show the ship's transformation into the scrapper's dream. "When my team studied your plasma conduits, we didn't just learn how to use them, we learned how they worked. And once we understood the principles behind them, we started asking different questions. What if we reversed the polarity? What if we channeled the energy through crystalline matrices instead of metal conductors? What if we used the magnetic fields to create gravitational anomalies?" Kethver's translator crackled with outrage. "Those are not the intended applications. Plasma conduits are for power distribution, nothing more." "According to who?" Williams asked calmly. "You never told. You asked that. In fact, your own technical manuals describe plasma as controllable ionized matter subject to electromagnetic manipulation. That description doesn't limit its applications, it defines its potential." The chamber buzzed with agitated conversation. As delegates realized what Williams was saying, the humans hadn't violated any specific prohibitions because no one had thought to create such prohibitions. The established galactic powers had become so set in their ways of thinking that they couldn't imagine anyone approaching their technology differently. "The Vector shield generators," Williams continued, calling up another hologram, "were designed to create protective barriers. But the underlying technology manipulates gravitational fields to deflect incoming attacks. Once we understood that principle, it became obvious that the same fields could be focused and projected as weapons. The Vector delegate's translator emitted what could only be described as electronic sputtering. That application never occurred to us. And that," Williams said with a slight smile, "is exactly my point. You've all become so specialized, so focused on doing things the way they've always been done, that you've forgotten how to innovate. You gave us your cast-offs because you thought they were obsolete, but you were wrong. They weren't obsolete. They were untapped potential waiting for someone to see what they could really do." Williams gestured toward the gallery, where human observers sat alongside alien journalists and military attaches from neutral worlds. "Every piece of technology in our fleet came from you. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every impossible capability, it all started with components you designed and built. We just had the audacity to ask what if instead of accepting. That's how it's always been done." The silence in the chamber was deafening. For the first time in galactic history, an entire assembly of advanced civilizations was being lectured. on innovation by the species they had considered primitive just 2 years earlier. But this creates an unacceptable military imbalance, protested the hegemony representative. Your ships are more powerful than anything in our fleets. Then maybe, William suggested, you should start asking what if instead of what's always. As the session devolved into chaos, with delegates arguing among themselves about technology, treaties, and the future of galactic power structures, Williams quietly returned to his seat. Around him, the representatives of 47 different species struggled to understand how their act of charity had created their greatest challenge. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about human nature. Give a human a tool and they'll find 10 uses for it that you never imagined. Give them a collection of tools, and they'll build something that changes everything. The aliens had thought they were being generous. Instead, they had armed the most dangerously creative species in the galaxy. 5 years had passed since the aliens delivered their gift of scrap metal to humanity. 5 years since they had smiled condescendingly at the primitive species who would surely be grateful for their generous charity. Now, as Grand Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound, she couldn't help but appreciate the irony of it all. The ship around her had once been a galactic consortium garbage scow, designed to haul waste between star systems. Today, it was powerful enough to crack moons and sophisticated enough to coordinate the movements of humanity's entire space fleet. The transformation was so complete that even the original consortium engineers wouldn't recognize their creation. Admiral, we're receiving another diplomatic request, reported Lieutenant Commander Park, her voice carrying a hint of amusement that had become common among human crews. This time it's from the Etherian Collective. They're offering to share their latest dimensional research in exchange for a non-aggression pact. Rodriguez nodded, unsurprised. It had become a daily routine. Species that had once looked down on humanity now competed with each other to offer treaties, trade agreements, and technology exchanges. The same civilizations that had donated their trash were now desperate to understand how that trash had become the foundation of galactic power. File it with the others, Rodriguez replied. We'll review all the offers at the weekly briefing. The weekly briefing had become necessary because the requests were coming in faster than humanity could process them. The Centauri wanted to license human plasma manipulation techniques. The Morden were offering rare minerals in exchange for modified mining laser designs. Even the proud hegemony had quietly suggested a mutual defense agreement. Though they were careful to phrase it as a partnership between equals, the transformation of galactic politics had been swift and dramatic. Where once humanity had been seen as a junior species struggling to keep up, they were now recognized as the most dangerous military force in known space. But what surprised everyone, including the humans themselves, was how this had changed the entire balance of galactic civilization. Dr. Chun, now the director of human technological development, entered the bridge carrying a stack of data tablets that represented the latest reports from across human space. His hair had gone gray in the 5 years since the alien gift, but his eyes still sparkled with the curiosity that had started it all. The latest production figures, he announced, setting the tablets on the command table. 17 new vessels, completed this month, each one incorporating innovations we couldn't have imagined a year ago. The pace of human technological advancement had actually accelerated since their initial breakthrough. Each new ship pushed the boundaries further, combining alien technologies in ways that their creators continued to insist were impossible. The latest vessels could manipulate time itself, creating localized temporal fields that made them effectively untouchable in combat. Any word from Earth about the colonial expansion program? Rodriguez asked. 3 new systems this month, Chun replied with satisfaction. The Vanguard colonial fleet is establishing permanent settlements faster than our mapmakers can update the charts. Having ships that can travel between dimensions has made exploration incredibly efficient. This was perhaps the most significant change. Humanity was no longer confined to the slow expansion that had characterized their early space efforts. with vessels that could phase through obstacles, manipulate gravity, and exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Human explorers were reaching parts of the galaxy that other species had never even detected. The aliens were discovering that their gift had consequences they never anticipated. Not only had humanity become militarily dominant, but they were also expanding faster than any species in galactic history. Human colonies were appearing in systems that other civilizations had written off as unreachable or uninhabitable. Admiral, called the communications officer, her voice carrying a note of excitement, "We're receiving a priority transmission from the exploration ship Dawn Treader. They're reporting contact with a previously unknown alien civilization in the Magellanic Void." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. The Magellanic Void was a region of space that most species avoided, filled with gravitational anomalies and dimensional instabilities that made travel impossible for conventional ships. The fact that humans could operate there safely was yet another advantage their modified technology provided. "Put them through," Rodriguez ordered. Captain Martinez appeared on the main screen, his uniform still bearing the dust of an alien world. Behind him, the bridge of the Dawn Treader buzzed with activity as his crew processed data from their latest discovery. "Admiral, you need to see this," Martinez began without preamble. "We found a species that's been isolated in the void for over 10,000 years. Their technology is unlike anything in the consortium databases." The screen shifted to show images of crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than being built, ships that moved like living creatures and beings, of pure light that communicated through color changes. "They call themselves the Ancients," Martinez continued, "and they've been watching galactic civilization develop from their isolation. They know about every species in the consortium, including us. But here's the interesting part. They want to make contact specifically with humanity." Rodriguez frowned. "Why us specifically?" "According to their speaker, we're the first species they've encountered that thinks like they do," they said, and I quote, "Finally, beings who ask what could be instead of what should be." The implications hit Rodriguez immediately. Humanity's approach to technology, the same creativity that had transformed alien scrap into galactic dominance, was apparently similar to how this ancient species thought. If the ancients had been developing their technology for 10,000 years using similar principles. "Admiral," Dr. Chun whispered, his face pale as he grasped the same implications. "If they're willing to share their knowledge... Rodriguez nodded grimly. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's technological revolution was just the beginning. Over the following months, news of humanity's contact with the ancients spread through the galactic community like wildfire. The same species that had been nervously watching human expansion suddenly found themselves facing the possibility that humanity would soon have access to technology that was 10 millennia more advanced than anything in known space. The response was predictable. Desperate diplomatic missions arrived at human space stations daily. Species that had never spoken to each other began forming alliances specifically to deal with the human threat. The Galactic Trade Consortium held emergency sessions to discuss containing human expansion, but it was too late. The transformation that had begun with a gift of garbage had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. Humanity had taken the unwanted scraps of alien civilization and forged them into the keys to galactic dominance. More importantly, they had proven that innovation and creativity were more valuable than any technology. As Rodriguez stood on her bridge, watching human ships patrol space lanes that had once been controlled by alien empires, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The aliens had thought they were being charitable, offering their cast-offs to a primitive species that would be grateful for any help. Instead, they had handed humanity the tools to reshape the galaxy itself, the greatest civilizations in known space had learned a lesson that would define the future of galactic politics. Never underestimate a species that refuses to accept limitations. The humans had taken junk and made it into the foundation of an empire. They had asked what if, when everyone else said that's impossible. And in doing so, they had proven that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't any weapon or technology, It was the human refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. The aliens had given them garbage. Humanity had given them a new universe.